This is a really good sign for Boston as Exhibit 10-day contract and training camp signee Lonnie Walker has finally arrived in Boston. And we're going to be diving in, looking at him arriving and how he could model his game after a Celtic that also went through the G League. Will Brad Stevens keep him on this roster? Will he get waived? And if he stays, will he stay and find a role in Joe Mazzulla's offense? We'll be looking at all of that and more on this episode of Celtics Digest. I'm Bruce Velez. You guys have been absolutely fantastic showing your love and support for this channel over the last couple months. So if you want to make sure you stay up to date on everything revolving around this Celtics team, even in the dry season right now, hit that like button. Without further ado, let's dive into the topic at hand. Make sure to grab a snack. And like we mentioned in the introduction, Lonnie Walker is here, ladies and gentlemen. He has finally arrived in Boston yesterday afternoon. We look at this article courtesy of Ben Stenar. New Boston Celtics player sends bold Instagram message after he posted on his Instagram story after arriving in Boston. Now, as we all know, Lonnie Walker arrived to Boston and posted a bold message on his story saying the chapter is going to be one hell of a story. Time to work. It was just him in the car chilling, nice little just flick on Instagram. But Lonnie Walker is a guy that has a great story in kind of coming over to before he even got to Boston, playing at University of Miami, drafted by the San Antonio Spurs as a draft steal, was, playing there, never really found his game offensively, went over to Los Angeles, looked pretty solid against with LeBron James, left Los Angeles once again, went over to Brooklyn, where he had his best shooting season of the year, and absolutely balled out. Now, as we know about Lonnie Walker, the original reporting was that Lonnie Walker from Wojnarowski had signed a 1-year deal. But from hearing furthermore from Adrian Wojnarowski, and like we've stated over here, or from Shams Charania, excuse me, that the contract details have been expanded and it is Exhibit 10-day contract, like I said in the introduction. The Exhibit 10-day contract allows the Celtics to give a bonus to Lonnie Walker if he is waived after training camp and plays for the Celtics G League team affiliate in Maine. So, like we mentioned, Lonnie Walker has been a fantastic player for in the NBA, averaging around 9.7 points, 2.2 rebounds, and 1.3 assists on 42% shooting from the field, and his best three-point season, averaging 38% from the three-point ball and integrating himself into an offense alongside Joe Mazzulla might be able to showcase him having some similarities in growth in that aspect. But he also could be sent to the G League if he were to get waived. Now, the Celtics, like we mentioned, have him on this Exhibit 10-day contract, along some other guys like Ron Harper Jr. and Tristan Nwara, who, if you guys watch the Celtics Summer League, know those names very, very well. Those guys will be competing alongside Lonnie Walker to fight for the last roster spot or possibly a spot on the G League roster once those guys get waived after their Exhibit 10 days. Then, if Lonnie Walker wants to stay in the G League, he can ultimately grow there, or he can compete for a roster spot somewhere else and get picked up throughout the season. We'll be discussing and getting more all on that when Lonnie Walker's training camp stuff goes and it kind of develops throughout the Celtics offseason, still progressing. So, like I said, keep you up to date. Let me know what you think about Lonnie Walker being here. I'm super excited for him to be here, and I'm really excited to see what he can show for the Celtics in training camp. Like I said, he is not under contract, and he is not under a standardized deal. The Celtics still have that one roster spot open. And that gets into our next part of the video, which is talking about a G League role if Lonnie Walker were to stay with the Boston Celtics. And that's right. There is a possibility that he does get waived, and a very high possibility, as we heard from Shams Charania over the last couple of weeks, that he could get waived and the Celtics could leave that roster spot open and use Lonnie Walker to kind of just test. So we're going to dive in and look at this article written by Matt John on Hardwood Houdini that talks about the Celtics, how they could handle Lonnie Walker in a similar way to how they handled Luke Kornet. Now, if you guys do not know, Luke Kornet was traded from the Chicago Bulls to the Boston Celtics and did finish out his contract in 2021 with the Celtics, but then re-signed in 2022 on a G League deal. Like we mentioned, Walker this year played pretty solid, but in the second half with the Nets kind of tanking and kind of going in a different direction, didn't really have the greatest second half of the year. And with the new CBA and the market kind of doing different things, all these players similar like Tyus Jones and Gary Trent Jr., and even a guy like Markel Fultz, who doesn't even have a job at this moment, all kind of fighting for NBA jobs, kind of thinking they'd get at least $5 to $6 million. They were unable to do so and now have to take these veteran minimum deals. Now, there is a possibility that the sides could both meet in the middle, like this article says, and which would be the best case and worst case scenarios come to fruition. Walker may get cut after the preseason, but that doesn't mean he can't be on the Celtics roster or even in the rotation sometime down the line. The Celtics have done something similar with a player in Luke Kornet. So when the Celtics did acquire Luke Kornet in back in 2021, when they did have him be a trade, but in 2022 they brought him back on a G League deal. He played on a G League deal for a 10-day contract throughout the season, and he played 10 games for the Maine Celtics after he was converted to a full-time deal. Similar to Neemias Queta this season as well. Neemias Queta was brought in on a two-way deal, played on the two-way deal for a majority of the season, and then was brought up at the end of the season to be that last guaranteed contract for the Boston Celtics. Now, the only difference is Lonnie Walker's had some NBA time, was obviously drafted as a first-round pick. Neemias Queta was not any of those. But Walker could obviously dominate the preseason from start to end, which is why cutting him could potentially erupt the masses. However, his contract details, that wouldn't mean his time with the Celtics would be done. Should he join the Maine Celtics, Walker could get a paid bonus to play there, and if the Celtics believe that he's shown enough warrant to roster a spot, they could convert him to a full-time contract like they did with Kornet 2 years ago. However, there might be some other moving parts to a hypothetical transaction. With Kornet, the Celtics didn't sign him to a full-time contract until they had several roster spots open, and that's obviously not the case this time around. Obviously, if Walker is, bona fide and does show us that he can prove to be a full-time guy, they will be able to add him. But don't be surprised if they do waive him for that G League deal, no matter how good he looks in the preseason. But ultimately, if he does get picked up and is brought on this team, don't be equally as surprised as well, because I think it's a 50-50 streak at this moment for the Boston Celtics, and so does Matt John. So thank you for that article. Absolutely fantastic work. But yeah, I kind of agree with Matt. I truly think that Lonnie Walker deserves to be an NBA player. I think he has the qualities to be one. And ultimately, I think at the end of this preseason, after his Exhibit 10-day contract, him, Tristan Awara, and Ron Harper Jr. will all be waived and will all be placed on that Maine Celtics team. Now, he would get a pay bonus, would likely stay with that squad, and who knows, 5 to 10 games, maybe even 15 games in the season, if he is dominating in the G League and is proving that he can be a guy that can play some of those low-end night games for the Boston Celtics on their main team and actually prove that, they could definitely bring him up as that 15th roster spot and have that full, especially if not a lot of trades are going down, especially if, there's not a lot of moves to be made at the start of the season. Everybody kind of wants to figure out who's going to be on their team. Lonnie Walker could easily be brought up. And ultimately, that's when I think it becomes a competition between Lonnie and Jaden Springer to kind of see who's going to be that backup two guard role. Now, the Celtics obviously saw a lot from Springer in the Summer League this year and did like what they saw with Jaden Springer in that one game because they did take him out after that one game. So ultimately, I do believe that a guy like Jaden Springer could be a guy that could stick with this team long term. But with Lonnie Walker being on a cheaper contract, and if they convert him to a bigger deal, he would be on that cheaper side. Maybe moving off of a guy in Springer to save some money and bringing in a guy like Lonnie Walker could be the move the Celtics make. But ultimately, Lonnie Walker is here in Boston. He is ready to compete at training camp, and I can't wait to see how great he looks in training camp. And hopefully, he stays either with the Celtics roster, either with the main team, or that's kind of funny, with the regular team in Boston or with the main G League team down in Maine, obviously. But regardless, I'd be happy for him to be in this organization because I truly think he can be one of those players that can blossom for this Celtics team. But let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. What are your guys' thoughts on Lonnie Walker? How do you guys think he's going to fit in? And do you guys think he'll ultimately make the roster by the start of the season? Drop down your thoughts. I'd love to read your comments. Like I said, we're trying to hit to 6,000 subscribers by the start of the season, and we are just a little over a month away. So if you are not subscribed, hit that subscribe button. We are less than 400 subscribers away from hitting that goal. Once again, I'm Bruce Veliz. Thank you guys so much for tuning into this episode of Celtics Digest, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Have a great rest of your day, and go Boston Celtics, baby.